Welcome to the Adriana Talks Dinero podcast, the podcast where we turn money lessons into tools for healing, confidence, and prosperity for our community. I'm Adriana, your bilingual money coach, educator, entrepreneur, and proud author. Here we honor our raíces and ancestors while building wealth for future generations. Each week, I'll share practical tips, wealth building strategies, and real talk to help you take control of your dinero, step into abundance, and go from surviving to thriving. Let's talk dinero. So, I have been wanting to talk about this topic for such a long time. And it took me so long to go ahead and talk about it because I also had to do a lot more research about the topic. Now, if you are watching the news, if you are on social media, or if you're like me and you're a history junkie, you are starting to see this repetitiveness of what is going on in the United States to the Latina community. There are ICE abductions going on. There is so much fear that our community is experiencing with the abductions and with not knowing what is going to happen next. We're starting to see a lot of the Latina communities that are really struggling. The businesses are struggling. There are a lot of individuals that are fearful. The kids are scared, and I absolutely hate being in this time again. And I say again because this is not the first time that this has happened in the United States. And in order to understand what's going on, we as a community really have to understand how our progression as a brown community is really offending the other side and is really just not sitting well with individuals who are white supremacists, who feel that Black and brown people should be suppressed and Black and brown people should not reach a sort of level in terms of economics, in terms of money, that they have the opportunity to. And if you know me personally, I am one of those people that I just love to learn all the things, even the bad and ugly, because my mom would always tell us, we can't understand where we're going if we don't understand where we're coming from or what has happened to us, nor where we're at currently. And I actually believe that's the ideology of Cesar Chavez, and she just always instilled that in us. We always have to educate ourselves, and we always have to understand what our people went through. And because of that, I've gotten to this ideology that I personally carry. And because of all that education, I actually feel like that's the biggest foundation on why I started Adriana Talks Dinero, because I was just disgusted at the fact that as a society, they want our community to go ahead and live in this way, in terms of not building wealth, in terms of breaking our back in order to make money and things like that. And I'm no, pues de aquí va a parar, right? We're not doing this anymore. We stop here. So for us to better understand the history, I want to go ahead and talk about numbers in terms of our wealth. For those of you who maybe have found me because I've done speaking engagements, in a lot of my speaking engagements, I like to go ahead and show the number on the buying power that we have as a Latina community. If you don't know this, our community actually has a buying power of $4.1 trillion. That's with a T. Now, if we as the Latina community in the United States were our own country, we would actually be number 5 on a global GDP. That actually puts us ahead of India, I believe. And the other side knows this. The other side knows that our buying power as a community is so huge. And we also see that in so many different things, right? We see that because if you look at the statistics of business owners, it's actually Latinas. 50% of all businesses are opened by Latinas. And that's saying a lot. I just think about it because me being an entrepreneur, I'm in these spaces with other women of color. I am also an entrepreneur myself, right? So as I network with people, it's these amazing women who are opening up restaurants, they're opening up daycare centers, they're opening up consulting businesses, they're selling clothing, they're selling all these different sorts of things. They have podcasts, they help out other entrepreneurs. The list goes on how many businesses I see opened by Latinas. And I'm very proud of that statistic. But it's also, for those who don't want to see us get ahead, that's also a very dangerous statistic, because when you become an entrepreneur, now you're making money on your own terms, and you are not accepting a salary from a corporation to say, oh, sorry, honey, we're only going to pay you X amount of money, and that's it. As an entrepreneur, it is up to you to go ahead and diversify your income and to also go ahead and make as much money as possible if that is your want and wish. And another statistic that I came across has to do with home ownership, actually. So I found a statistic that the total number of homeowners is nearly 10 million Hispanic households were homeowners as of 2024. 10 million. And that number is only going up. So that means that the home ownership rate has reached a record of 51%. So 51% of homeowners are Latinos. And they're actually projecting that Hispanic Americans or Latina Americans will make up approximately 70% of all new homeowners in the United States by 2040. We're not too far away from 2040. And what we're also seeing is that the median age is 31 for a lot of these homes. And that's just like first time home ownership. Again, I have a network. I have amazing people around me who are homeowners, and not just homeowners. There are a ton of people in my world that also own multiple properties. So it's not just home ownership, it's real estate. And they know it, and they absolutely know it. So here we are having a $4.1 trillion buying power, but here we are as well as a community trying to find all these different ways to go ahead and build wealth. And because we come from a whole culture and a whole community that we saw the sacrifices of our grandparents, we saw the sacrifices of our parents, of the older siblings in our families, we ourselves want to go ahead and do better as well. And right now, it's currently the 23rd, which is a Sunday of November. And there's a lot of things going on with the education, that they're starting to take away accreditation with education, which that's a whole different discussion. I'm going to make a podcast episode on that. I'm going to go ahead and say it right now. I'm going to make a podcast episode on that because it's one of those things where there's always this argument about, oh, education isn't worth the money, or no, you shouldn't go to school. And I think that education is a personal choice at the end of the day. Like it doesn't matter if you want to just do an associate's, a bachelor's, master's, doctorates, or if you just want to go to trade school. I honestly believe that it's a personal choice, but I can honestly say, as an individual who has worked her way through the higher education system, and now I can proudly say that I have a double MBA, that I am so grateful that I had the opportunity to get educated. And because of my education, I am where I am today. And because of my education, I have been able to gain so many skills in the way that I think, in the way that I navigate through this life, and in the way that I interact with individuals as well. And it has also opened so many doors for me that I know that life wouldn't open those doors if I didn't have an education. Because of education and because so many of us, you probably heard this too from your parents, like there was no if, ands, or buts, but you were going to get an education. Some of us were pushed into, an education maybe we didn't want. I fought tooth and nail that I didn't want to do nursing because that was something that my dad really wanted me to do. And I said, that's not for me. And I tried it in high school. I did the CNA program. I absolutely hated it. I did not understand this whole obsession of like the anatomy class and stuff like that. Like I could care less. And I ended up not going through with nursing and gave my dad my CNA certificate. I said, here, like, I don't want this. Congratulations. Like you have a certified nursing assistant as a daughter. But this isn't for me. I'm going to go try other things, and ended up in business. And I never took, a regret, or I never looked back on it, saying that I wish I would have gone to nursing, because I sure as heck didn't. But I want to share some statistics with you when it comes to education in the Latina community. So in 2024, 21% of U.S. Hispanics aged 25 or older had a bachelor's degree or higher, which is an increase from 13% in 2010. So in 14 years, right, because 2010 and then going to 2024, it almost doubled. And this rate is higher for U.S. born Hispanics, which is 24%. And then, of course, Latinas are getting more education than Latinos as well. And honestly, I'm just predicting that this is going to go up and up every single year. And I remember, as I started my college career, and, you would go to the graduations and there weren't as many of us. There weren't as many Latinos crossing the stage, but I'm proud to see, as I've gone to other people's graduations, like after I graduated with my MBA, I think it was like 2018, 2019. And now, as I've gone back, now that we're in 2025 and coming into 2026, I'm seeing that like almost half of graduates are from Latina descent. And I get so excited hearing the long last names and hearing the Latino last names and the Latino first names. And it's so beautiful to see, and to see everyone with their stoles of, the countries that they're representing and things like that. So that's a big piece as well, is education and how we ourselves are finding a way to progress forward to go ahead and make more money. So you're probably asking, like, Adriana, why are you telling me all of this? Well, if we as a society are moving forward, but yet the Caucasian group that is here is still staying the same or is falling back because they don't have the drive and the ambition that we do, they're going to get pissed. If we look at the elections, the last election, and we saw the narrative of immigrants are stealing our jobs. Immigrants are stealing the opportunity for us to buy homes. Immigrants are taking away opportunities. And it's like, well, no, we are working hard to go ahead and get to that point. And we are also very resourceful. So we are going to go ahead and say we're going to have a goal and we're going to meet that goal and whatever that may take. And they're pissed. And they're absolutely pissed that as a society, as a community, as a demographic, as what they think in their head, a minority, we're getting ahead and they're falling back. But yet they are the group that says pull yourselves up by the bootstraps and whatnot. And essentially we are as a community, and we're thriving because of it. And they hate to see our community winning. And everything that's going on with these ICE abductions, it is not new. Unfortunately, it is not new. This has happened multiple times in history, 3 times if we look at it. So let's go ahead and go through the history of it. So back in the early 20th century, which happened a few times in 1907 and then in 1920 and 1921. During the economic downturn of 1907 and 1920 and 1921, so if that sounds familiar, that's like the Great Depression, there were early waves of abductions, deportations happening that were linked to economic conditions. They were more like on a smaller scale, but nonetheless, because the economic downturn was happening, they needed someone to blame and they needed someone to get rid of, which were the brown people, which were majority Mexican Americans. So that was the first one. The next one, which was the most significant deportation periods in U.S. history, was between the years of 1929 and 1939. Estimated, because they don't even keep track of this stuff, but it's estimated between 300,000 to 2 million Mexicans and Mexican Americans, so those are citizens of the United States, were deported. And with that group, it's estimated to be 40 to 60% of them being U.S. citizens, and an overwhelming number of them were children. So these deportations peaked during that Great Depression, like I just mentioned. And the government formally deported at least 82,000 people, with a vast majority occurring between 1930 and 1933. They said it was voluntary, but it wasn't voluntary. It was forced, very much like how it is right now. And right now what they're doing is they are picking people up. They are racially profiling, and it doesn't matter if you're a citizen or not. We're starting to see a lot of that. And when you're in the detention center, they're going to give you a paper that basically says sign this. And what we're finding out is many times they're getting lied to, and it's actually their voluntary deportation paperwork. So very much in the same sense of what's happening now, local governments and officials rounded up children and adults by raiding public places. And these deportations affected people across the entire country, and it wasn't just border states. It impacted a lot of communities in Michigan, Colorado, Illinois, Ohio, and New York. And then number 3 is Operation Wetback, which happened in 1954. This one was implemented in June of 1954. And this one was under President Dwight Eisenhower. And I feel like this one is very much relatable what's happening right now as well, because his mission was that he wanted to use military-style tactics to remove Mexican immigrants, which is what we see now, right? We see the Border Patrol, we see ICE, and all of the other ones, Homeland Security and everyone else, that are using force, that are using violence, that are shooting at people, they're using pepper spray and tear gas and all the things. During this time, it was reported that 1.1 million undocumented workers had left the country either voluntarily or through prosecution. Although some estimates put the figure closer to 300,000, the operation began in California and Arizona in June of 1954, and then it moved to Texas of 1954 in July, and then later on after that, it moved into the Midwest. The border agents' tactics included descending on Mexican-American neighborhoods, which we're seeing very much here in Chicago. They're going after individuals in the neighborhoods such as La Villita, in Pilsen, in the suburbs of Chicago. We're seeing it in Elgin and Aurora and West Chicago, and all these areas that it is very heavily Latino. So they would go ahead and go into Mexican-American neighborhoods demanding identification from quote-unquote Mexican-looking citizens. Rings a bell from right now as well. On the streets, they would invade private homes in the middle of the night, which we've already seen that happen, and raiding Mexican businesses, which is why we're starting to see so many Latino-owned businesses that have the sign on the door that if you're ICE, you're not welcome. And we're seeing so many of them also locking their doors, so you have to knock on the door in order to get in, and they're going to make sure that you're not with ICE. Many U.S. citizens were also swept up in these operations. And here we are in 2025, living through it all over again. And the part that infuriates me the most is that as I have had conversations with individuals who look like me, who come from very similar blood as me, who come from countries like I do, or whose parents and grandparents had very similar stories to come to this country. And they say, well, who would have thought this would happen? And it's like, if you took the time to watch documentaries, if you took the time to go to museums, if you took the time to educate yourself on the history of our people coming to the United States, you would know that all of these things happen. If you had conversations, but true conversations with loved ones who have migrated here or who used to migrate here, you would understand. It's up to us to learn our history, right? All of those things that I just mentioned, those 3 times in history in the 1900s. Look it up. There's documentaries about it. They're hard to watch, but let me tell you, like my mother says, like, if you don't know your history, like, you're never going to know your future. And it is exactly that in this country. Unfortunately, we are a country of uneducated individuals. And it's done like that on purpose. It's done like that on purpose because that's how it makes it so easy to do what is happening right now. And if you look at the current administration that we have in office, and you see all of the decisions that are currently happening with like government contracts, with where the money is going, with who's making money, with how our people are being used for profit, like follow the paper pretty much. You will go ahead and see why these things are happening as well. They want more homes for their quote unquote like real Americans. These prison systems are literally for profit, right? So if you don't know this, in order for someone to make a phone call to a family member or to an attorney, they have to pay for it. How do they pay for it? They go ahead and they do prison labor, and they're charged a ton of money to go ahead and make this call. If I'm not mistaken, I think I have heard somewhere or I have read somewhere that it's $1 a minute. And with the $1 a minute, they also have to work for that dollar, which is like a day's worth of labor for $1. And honestly, it's like modern day slavery. So if again you follow the paper, you're starting to see as well that a lot of quote unquote friends of this administration are making a lot of money off of what's happening right now. If it is that they are the owners of the companies that make these prisons, if they are the ones that are investing in the stock or in the company to employ prison guards, to employ the technology, to go ahead and build these places, to go ahead and provide services at the detention centers. And then also, there's a lot of agreements with technological companies to go ahead and track individuals so they can go ahead and go after them as well and detain them and, keep them in these detention centers. It is literally for profit. And because so many of us are maybe fighting for a union, we want workers' rights, we want to be treated fairly. What they are doing as well is that they're using these detention centers for that labor. So instead of, let's say, having agricultural labor, which is unfortunately very inexpensive for the farmer or for whoever owns the crop to go ahead and pay these migrant farmers, right? If it is that they pay them like a few cents per box of strawberries, they see it more of a profit to go ahead and detain this individual, put them in a detention center, use them for very cheap labor where they're out there under the sun picking produce for $1 a day rather than a few cents per box. And then they go ahead and they use that $1 a day to go ahead and call their family for 5 minutes a week. And then while that individual is in the detention center, they have a contract with the government for the government to go ahead and pay to feed them or anything else. And it's just this vicious cycle. So ultimately, the reason why we are in this and the reason why there are kidnappings, it has to do with money. It has to do with finances. And for those who say, well, Adriana, this country wasn't founded on that. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. If you look at the Constitution and if you look at what our founding fathers wanted, people of color were not part of that. The Native Americans, that this was their land, was not a part of that. Women were not a part of that. And white men who did not own property was not a part of that either. I heard a speech during the past election time here, in earlier November. And it was somebody talking to the volunteers, and the gentleman said something that just stuck with me, and it will always stick with me. And I wish I would have saved the video because it was so much truth, but it was also a hard pill to swallow as well. But he said, and to paint the picture, it was a black man that was talking, and it was a room full of diversity. There were Black people, there were brown people, there were women, there were Asian people, there were white people and things like that. It was just literally a group of individuals that were kind of just saying, okay, we did all we could for this election, and whatever happens, happens. And he was kind of giving them the thank you speech and really painting the picture on what this country was founded on and how we want the country to go. And he literally said, every single one of us, but maybe 5 men in this room, were all amendments to the Constitution. And he started pointing them out. He's like, you as a woman, you're an amendment of the Constitution. You as a Black person, you're an amendment to the Constitution. And he started going around the room and started saying all of the different things. You're an amendment to the Constitution. And I was just like, damn. We are, this land was not founded for us. This land was not, or this country was not founded with us in mind. It was founded to exploit us. And yet here we are again. No matter what amendments were in place, no matter what laws were put into place, the reality of what this country was founded on is coming out again. So when someone tells you, or when someone asks you, I don't understand why we're going through this, or why are we going through this, tell them it's the money. It's the money and the power, which is why I do what I do, because I understand and I have seen what life can be if women and people of color have money in their hands. History, unfortunately, repeats itself until we learn from that history and do something different. I hope that this is the last time that we have to go through this as a community. I hope that we don't ever have to see, this sort of horrible narrative happening in front of us. But unfortunately, right now we are. And you're probably thinking, well, Adriana, here we are, living history all over again. That list of 3 is now a list of 4 times in history where our community has been abducted and deported. What do we do now? And there's a ton of things you can do now. For one, you're listening to this podcast, so, you're doing one good thing. For 2 is to educate yourself on all of the historical things that had happened to us as a community. And whatever you learn, share that with other people, right? If you're going to watch a documentary, have it be a movie night. Order in from a minority-owned business and have some good food and watch a documentary. Sign up for those rapid response teams. I can't share too much on what I'm doing on that end because it's all underground and I'm not supposed to share what I'm doing because it's supposed to be under wraps. But there's a lot of grassroots like groups happening. There's a lot of undercover, underground sort of things going on in the back end that people have no idea about. With like secret chats going on and like information going on, and some of us kind of putting ourselves on the line to be that middle person because we have the privilege to be US citizens, so we're going to put ourselves in the middle of it. So go ahead and look into that, or reach out to someone that that is part of something like that, and we actually have a way to get you into it. So we only inform those who we trust and we know is a true ally. Another thing is to support those minority-owned businesses. They're hurting. They're hurting. If you're from Chicago or you're from Illinois, you're hearing the statistics about what's going on in La Vida and that business is down. And they are like the number 2 area in Chicago that brings in the most profits, the most money, right behind Michigan Avenue. They're on 26th Street in La Villita. And I have very fond memories of 26th Street in La Villita. Did violence happen? Yeah, but I mean, those were my people and the food was good. It still is good. And they're still my people. And more than anything, understand that your money are votes for different things. And understand that you, as a brown person, are you're so resilient and you're so powerful. And as a group, we are as well, which is why this is what's going on. They know that we are a force to be reckoned with. They know what's going to happen in a few years. We're not going to be the minority anymore. We're going to be the majority. And with a lot of decisions that we're making and starting businesses and buying up real estate and putting ourselves in an amazing financial position, there's going to be this turn. There's going to be this turn where we are going to be the wealthy ones. We're going to be the ones that are running for office. We are going to be the ones making decisions. We're going to be the powerful ones. Because guess what? If you're not going to invite us to the table, we're going to build our own damn table. And we are going to build that damn table together. So, I know this podcast episode lasted quite a bit longer than my normal podcast episodes, but this has been something that I've been wanting to talk about for so long. And if you take anything away from this, just know that we have the power to go ahead and change things. The way that you spend money, the way that you educate yourself and you expose yourself to this information is very, very important. So go ahead and look into all of the different things that I mentioned. Read books about this, or read books about any sort of like racial sociology sort of thing, because even what has happened to our Black communities, a lot of those tactics and a lot of those narratives have been used on us or are being used on us. So I hope that this episode opened your mind. I hope you can kind of make a little bit of a better understanding on what's going on in the world right now, or what's going on in the country right now. And just know that there's a lot of us out there that are doing a lot of work in this in so many different ways that maybe the public eye isn't seen like right away necessarily. And know that there's a lot of us that are using our voices and are using our platform to go ahead and fight this as well. If you found this informative, please share it with other individuals. Share it on your social media, share it with siblings, with parents, and next week I will be going over the same information in Spanish. Because we got to hear it in both languages, right? So I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this episode. This one really came from the heart and the soul and every kind of like last bit of me. And like I said, this has been something I've been wanting to say for a long time. And it's kind of felt like a moment for me to like, desahogarme. So I hope you learned something, and I hope you're able to reflect, and that you pick up maybe a book or two, or even an audiobook, or spend some time watching some documentaries on this. So if you really like this episode, make sure that you rate, like, share, and subscribe, and that you join us next time. I'll talk to you later.